We're back. It's 2026 Hometown Conversations with Sharon and Jenny. I'm Jen DeLucia, host of Spill With Me, Jenny D. Sharon?
Hi, my name is Sharon St. Clair. Happy New Year, everyone. And I'm with Howard Hanna Real Estate Services. And we are so happy today to have a special guest. We have Matt Costigan with HBKS Wealth Advisors.
Hey, Jenny and Sharon, thank you so much for having me. I am Matt Costigan. I am a principal and senior financial advisor with HBKS Wealth Advisors. I am a CPA as well as a certified financial planner. And just a little bit about my background. I started out in the world of taxes, and after a few years of working with a Big Four accounting firm, decided to make the switch over to the investment advisory world with HBKS Wealth Advisors. And our mother company is HBK CPAs and Consultants. So I like to think that we can help clients with a variety of financial planning and tax issues. And I'm excited to be here with both of you today to talk about some poignant issues. Thank you.
So, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We thought we would start out the year as we look at hometown conversations of elevating, educating, and informing to be your personal best, whatever that means. So obviously, starting the new year, starting with money. The first question is, investors have many choices for types of financial advisors that they can work with. Can you explain those choices and what it means to be a fiduciary?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it being this, your first show of 2026, New Year's resolutions, money is always a big one for a lot of people. So if they haven't developed a relationship with an investment advisor, those can come in all different forms, right? And I would highly encourage, anyone watching this to Google suitability versus fiduciary. That will give you a world of information of what the differences are between those two. But quite candidly, if you're talking with, if you're interviewing a financial advisor or a couple different financial advisors, and by the way, I would encourage anyone that's out there looking for help in the financial planning and investment advisory world to talk to a couple different folks as part of that search. But I am a certified financial planner that holds me to the fiduciary standard. And really what that means is I have to do the right thing for clients regardless of the compensation outcome. And, that's very personal to me. That's how I want to be able to live my life and run my business within HBKS Wealth Advisors. It makes it really, really easy because you have to do the right thing over and over again.
Right. So, Matt, just as a quick follow-up to that, as a fiduciary, that means that you always are placing the client's interest above what you may have as a financial interest in the decisions that they make. Their interest always has to come first and foremost based upon the suitability of their financial goals and what you're advising. Does it line up with the goals that you've worked on and established together? Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's very accurate. Have to do the right thing, for the client with all available options that are out there.
Okay.
Yep.
And with that said, before I jump into another question, just to get an understanding of this, so you are all-inclusive as an advisor. And so what that means is that, you want to get an entire picture of someone and what all of the things that they have going on. So the way I would analogize it would be if someone has a lot of prescriptions, you would basically be that person that say, you know what, bring them all in and let's see how they're interacting together. Let's look at all of the resources and tools that you're currently using or not using. And then from there, start to make overall decisions, understanding how they work together. Maybe there's some duplication, canceling, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's exactly right. When we start to work with clients, we want to look at what current insurance policies that they have. We want to look at all their investment statements, their employer retirement plans, if they're fortunate to have one of those, if they're fortunate to have pension benefits. That seems to be a dinosaur in our industry these days with, defined benefit plans not being out there. We want to ask for their tax returns. Looking at someone's tax return can really reveal, a lot of the information, that they have. We want to ask, do they have estate planning documents set up? Do they have wills, power of attorneys? I think it's shocking to find out how many people out there do not have their estate planning documents in place. And so while, we're not attorneys and we don't draft legal documents, we will partner with the right type of attorney to be able to help that client design their estate plan and have all of their estate planning documents in order. And it can really be as simple as, someone that is, newly married, maybe has, started a family, has a child. One of the most important documents they can have in place is, the document that says what happens to your kids if both of you were to pass away. That is, guardianship provisions. That is extremely important, right? So, we want to make sure that clients have all of those pieces working together in harmony.
So these are all of the pieces of financial planning and all of those tools that work in a cohesive, comprehensive fashion.
Yeah, that's right. And it's all about, getting together with the client on a pretty regular basis so that, it's a check-in, making sure they're doing what they should be doing. We do try our best to lead with planning in that regard. Investment markets rise and fall, and, there's some things that can't be controlled, but, there's certain levers of a person's life that can be controlled, right? How much they're saving, what their asset allocation looks like, and do they have all of the appropriate protections in place should something goes awry in their life? If a loved one passes away, if someone becomes disabled, et cetera.
Right. What I'm hearing you say is that it's never too early. So even if you think I'm on the younger side, it's never too early.
I was thinking that too.
And it's it's really never too late, but it's never too early. So it's February.
Yes.
And it feels like January. And we're entering into the heart of tax season. What are the things investors can do to lower their 2025 taxable income, and now that we're already in 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And, we spend a fair amount of time year-end, doing year-end planning with clients to make sure they're taking the right possible steps, right? Tax loss harvesting within investable assets to be able to bring down capital gains, and just looking at, should they be prepaying certain taxes and doing a lot of tax projections with those clients. But one of the main things that someone can do right now, and there's really, the year is over, but the IRS does allow for most retirement plan contributions to be made for the prior year, right? So those retirement planning contributions into, whether it's a self-employed or solo 401k, a SEP IRA plan, or just a regular IRA, those are contributions that can be made that can lower someone's taxable income. And generally you've got all the way up until the tax filing deadline of April 15th to be able to make those contributions.
Right. So we have until April 15th.
Yep.
To look at the retirement vehicles and be able to make contributions for 2025, getting an assessment of where you stand with taxes and just looking at the overall picture.
Correct.
So that you can maximize that outcome.
Yeah, which again means, having an understanding of what someone's tax situation, looks like. And again, as my background, being a CPA, I can help identify what those opportunities are.
Right. So in 2026, I don't know if you kind of answered a little bit, and moving forward, how can investors develop a portfolio to minimize taxes?
Oh,
absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we will utilize in client portfolios is a strategy called asset location, right? So if you think of, putting asset classes into two major categories, stocks and bonds, very basic. the main driver of rate of returns for stocks are capital gains. Capital gains with the current tax code, and it's been this way for quite some time, enjoy a lower tax rate generally than ordinary income. And then if you look at fixed income or bonds, those asset classes tend to spit off a lot of income as far as their rate of return. So what we'll do is we'll look at a client's entire portfolio together with all their different accounts. And generally, that will include something, like an IRA where there's tax deferral, and we will put those try and put fixed income asset classes or those asset classes that spit off a lot of current ordinary income so that they can remain tax deferred inside of an IRA. And then we'll try and put stocks or capital appreciation assets outside in non-qualified or non-retirement accounts so that they can receive more preferential tax treatment of paying capital gains tax versus ordinary income tax. And, that's something, we don't often see when we see statements from, someone's working with an investment advisor and they want a second opinion, is we won't see that type of strategy being employed. Doesn't cost the client any more money to be able to do that with working with their investment advisor. But as I always like to say, someone's after-tax rate of return is their real rate of return. Taxes have to come into effect as part of the decision making.
So you do the whole portfolio for
Correct.
them? Okay.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. And really that also includes looking at if someone is, currently working and has substantial assets within their employer retirement plan, their 401k or their 403b, is looking at what the asset allocation should be inside of those accounts as well.
great.
So, Matt, before I jump into another question, I find a lot of times that I am working in real estate because that's also an asset class.
Yeah.
That's a very large asset
Oh
class.
yeah, for sure.
A lot of times I'm working with CPAs, I'm working with trusts, financial advisors, and really a team of people. Do you include that as well as part of your services, that you would, basically collaborate and work with those professionals when you're looking at the entire picture? Because depending upon where their holdings are in, let's say, real estate, and they may want to, for tax planning purposes, make some real estate decisions to maximize those outcomes.
Yeah, we absolutely do that. I mean, it is part of our planning software that we utilize. We're considering all of a client's assets, looking at their total personal financial statement, right? So assets, liabilities, oftentimes that will include, businesses and real estate, right? Are those real estate assets, if they're, are they kicking off cash flow? Should that be considered as part of someone's financial plan? If they're not, do they plan to divest of those real estate assets at some point in time? Or do they have a future goal to purchase real estate from their investable assets, right? And that's a pretty common one. Someone approaching retirement, looking for a second home somewhere. How is that going to fit into, their entire financial planning picture?
Absolutely. As we were waiting to come on air, one of my investor clients was texting me, asking me some questions. So I'm going to be talking to you later, and asking you and connecting. So, public stock market indexes are reaching all-time highs.
Correct. They have been. Yes.
And what should be the asset allocations for different types of investors?
Well, that's a very personalized decision for, a person's time horizon and what their risk tolerance is, right? I mean, generally, clients that have a much longer time frame, we encourage them to take on more risk, which means having, more assets and, as part of their asset allocation mix in stocks, things that are a little bit more volatile. And if someone is approaching retirement or in retirement, they might be a little bit more balanced. They might have more fixed income. But publicly traded stocks right now reaching all-time highs. What we try to implement in client assets of a certain portfolio size are private investments, private equity, private credit, things that are not subject to the whims of the publicly traded stock market. I mean, take yourself back to mid-March of 2020 when we were right in the height of COVID.
Oh.
It seemed like everyone was hitting the sell button on the public stock market, and things were falling off of a sheer cliff because it is a public market, where the prices are priced in literally every second. And so if you're neurotic about what your investments are, you could be clicking refresh and, seeing the portfolio value, change in real time by thousands of dollars. And that's really unnerving. So being able to use private asset classes that are not priced in publicly can really be, a strong part of someone's portfolio mix of having something that is semi-liquid, maybe not readily available to help ride out the gyrations of where the stock markets are. And quite frankly, I don't know where the stock market indices are going to head. No one knows. And if they say that, they're lying. They really don't know. That's why we need to take into consideration, someone's overall time horizon and what their goals are from a longer term planning perspective.
So it's balance of timing and risk, risk allocation to hedge products depending upon the amount that they have to invest, as well as their age, their goals, and where their risk tolerance is.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a balancing act, altogether. And, and the job of, selecting assets to be in a portfolio. So our firm manages a little over $7 billion. We are large enough where we have a dedicated asset management group of chartered financial analysts, or CFAs. That is a full-time position to be able to select those asset classes and the asset allocation mix for client portfolios. That is definitely a separate job. I like to think that I could, from scratch, build a really nice investment portfolio, but my job is really servicing clients from a longer term, financial planning process and looking at all of their items together and then searching for new clients as well.
So what you're saying is, as a CPA and a CFP, that you're working with the CFAs, which is a chartered financial analyst. So you're basically coming together for that holistic team approach. Is that my understanding?
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. And in fact, I mean, we're looking at right now making some changes within our client portfolios that, through technology that we have within our firm, where we're able to implement those trades in all of our clients' accounts very effectively and very quickly. So it's a more proactive process than something that is reactionary to what's going on in the capital markets.
I love that.
How are you using artificial intelligence in your business today?
Oh man, that's a hot topic and a great question. That is,
you opened the door. I'm just.
Oh, I know. It's it's really it's proceed with caution. I think it is, I think certain, large language models or AI is a great way to, maybe start off to get, a particular question answered. But I would, that you need to verify with sources that things are accurate. I don't think you can really believe what a computer says. We have started to utilize within our firm a note-taking system, right? Which, listens in on a client. We're always very open to tell clients like, hey, this is here and we're doing it. But, you would not believe, what comes out of that as far as like what meetings, note meetings would look like. And then, we edit, go in, add other notes, and, it works out really well. It's a tool to make us more efficient.
And so I know Jenny has an excellent question, but just to make sure that when you do the note-taking and artificial intelligence, that all comes under the umbrella of the fiduciary relationship and the client confidentiality provisions.
Oh yeah, correct? Absolutely. Yeah. Remains confidential within the client file, but we have a duty to our clients to be able to document.
Understood. So I just wanted to make sure of the confidentiality.
For sure.
So Matt, I have to ask you this. So how does insurance play in financial planning? Yeah,
that's a good question. While we don't generally lead with insurance in our, in my practice at HBK as Wealth Advisors, that's definitely part of the larger financial planning process. If someone has insurance that's already in place, we want to take a look at it. We want to make sure that it's doing what it's intended to do. And we want to make sure that people have the insurance that they need, right? Whether that is life insurance, disability insurance, right? That is particularly important if someone, maybe doesn't have, group disability insurance, that they have, that they are covered. If they are self-employed, maybe for folks that are on the doorstep of retirement and, have done raising children, their next concern might be long-term care insurance, right? Something that as they get older and, we all are living a lot longer, is to make sure that they have insurance in place to be able to cover those long-term care needs and not spend down their investable assets to do so, so that they can, if they need home care, or if they need to be in a facility, that they can cover a majority of what those costs are. So it's really just moving, one asset from one column over to the other, because that is definitely an asset, is having those types of insurance. Now, if you're me, I'm in my mid 40s. I have 3 young daughters. Both of my wife and I have a lot of life insurance, because if something were to happen to either one of us, there would need to be, a cash inflow to be able to support what our household is. So, it just varies upon what's needed, and, making sure that people have the right tools out there so that, protection planning is really covered in someone's longer term financial plan.
Right. Thank you.
So with 11,000 baby boomers retiring every day, which is a mind-blowing number. How should someone determine when they should file for Social Security retirement benefits?
Yeah, this is, and what I always like to say to clients whenever we are addressing that topic is, if you could tell me exactly when you're going to die, I could tell you exactly when to file for Social Security, right?
Yeah.
So, generally we will try and use, and there's, and what I think is crazy about Social Security is it's really not so straightforward for the average person to understand, especially married couples, where there could be different filing strategies, in place. But we try and use Social Security as a hedge against longevity risk, or put more simply, the risk of living a long time, right? So Social Security comes from the government, comes from the ability to, raise taxes, to be able to promise what those benefits are. So generally we'll try and encourage, if it's a married couple, the spouse that has the larger earnings record or larger benefits, to try and, delay their filing strategies so that, they're maximizing what their lifetime benefits are. And maybe the spouse that has the lower amount of benefits, starting a little bit earlier, right? So sort of a barbell strategy between those two. And really it's a great income replacer, because we talked about earlier, pensions or guaranteed income, they're much more rare these days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So because we like to educate and empower people in our show, are there 1 to 3 small actions that an average person can take listening to this today that could have an impact on their financial health and picture?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming up with a budget is a great one. So if you are working, your money can go to one of 3 places. You either spend it goes to taxes, or you can save/invest it, right? And so, if you develop a budget to, come up with what your spending is, you can pick a percentage, and generally, 10 to 14% is really what's recommended to try and save what your income is, for the long term. If you have a longer period of time, you can be very, very successful with saving nominal amounts of money. Another thing I would point out to is making sure that someone has a cash buffer, right? Making sure they have money set aside in savings that are not subject to the risk of what the capital markets are doing, so that if they have an emergency, they know that money is there. Oftentimes we'll have clients come in the door and say, I've got X amount of dollars to invest, and well, what are you purchasing in the next 6 months, or what do you plan to do? And we'll say, well, really you only have this amount of money to invest. So I think budgeting and having some cash savings aside is something that is very achievable for really everybody.
Absolutely. So I was going to ask you, what is a good baseline of assets under management and number of clients that a top wealth advisor like you should anticipate?
Yeah, absolutely. We find that we service clients well within the couple to few $1 million range, but we also service clients very well with a lower number of investable assets than that, right? So everyone is able to get, financial planning and, come up with a good game plan for what they should be doing and how they should be saving on an ongoing basis. And generally, as far as like number of clients, I mean, once you start to reach, the 100 or so marker is when you need additional staff,
Yes.
right? We have multiple advisors in our office that are serving multiple clients. And, we try to take a team approach so that each client knows a few people within the office. I mean, people get sick, they go on vacation. Taking a team approach really seems to work so that the client can, know that they have someone to reach out to should they have a need.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, then we have the team approach,
Mm-hmm.
but we have the ability to have a relationship,
Yeah.
but then they also understand the actions that their colleagues have taken so that they can go in at any time, look at it, and then be able to readily pick up a
Right.
conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again,
Right.
being very detailed with, note taking, knowing what a client has going on, that is paramount to a longer term client relationship.
Matt, so we really appreciate you coming
Yeah,
by.
thank you for having me.
And what we're going to do is I'm going to host an event, and I'm going to invite our viewers. Everything will be, you'll just have to make an RSVP. We'll announce the date and time and the venue, but we're going to have Matt come in so that he can meet with people and then answer questions.
This
And
was a lot of information.
This was a lot of information.
I tell you what,
to
it's
unpack.
it's like drinking from a fire hose, right?
Yes.
You always want to try and be slow and deliberate, but there is a lot of information
There is
to
a lot.
unpack.
And we really
Yeah.
appreciate your expertise and your time.
Yes.
And then we can do it in a more intimate setting. Thank you so much for
I've
sharing
learned
your
so
time.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks
and
for
your
having me on.
insights.
Enjoyed talking with both of you. Thanks so much.
Yes, I'm so excited. This was another episode of Hometown Conversations with Sharon and Jenny. And we are going to be on again. We're going to have a relationship therapist. So make sure to tune into that one as well. And Matt, thank you so much
Hey,
for
thank you.
being on,
Appreciate
taking
the
the
time.
time to be here today with our show.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Happy New Year. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon.